Session 2 of this American Formula 1 Grand Prix weekend gets underway in around about 7 minutes' time, so it's high time we rejoined our commentators, Ben Edwards and that old reminiscer himself, John Watson.
Thanks very much, Matt. Well, we've seen some action and incidents already so far here at Indianapolis with this first free practice, particularly Rubens Barrichello's accident. We've been talking about it. And in fact, just out on track at the moment, there are some Ferrari mechanics and engineers, as you can see now, out there having a good look around, John, just to see if there are any bits that they can find that might tell them a little bit more of a story as to what's going on.
Yes, and I suspect the bits that they're looking for are the mechanical parts rather than the bits attached to the wheel, the rubber bits, in other words. So they're just, bits hit the barrier, get thrown across the racetrack, and if there's something there they may see as, let's say, evidence to help resolve the issue, then they'll do so indeed.
Well, we'll wait to find out, and of course expecting to see Michael Schumacher hopefully back out in this next session. Meanwhile, the other teams are preparing, getting ready for the final 1 hour of free practice. There's Juan Pablo Montoya, and as you see, ended up, well, in fact, those are the points. He ended up 5th fastest after the first hour of free practice here for the United States Grand Prix, a race which, as we saw from the highlights, he was going very well in last year until he suffered engine failure. So maybe this year he can make up for that disappointment and come through to win on a track where he's won in the past in the Indy 500 itself. Good weather conditions now. We saw quite a lot of cloud, damp track to start things off in the first free practice session. There is Michael, and looks as though he may be getting ready to come back out. So hopefully Ferrari have determined what was the cause of the problem for Barrichello and are confident enough to send him out. He only did 4 laps, including the installation lap earlier on, so they really haven't done much mileage today.
No, they haven't, but clearly they must be sufficiently reassured that they've got an idea of what caused Rubens' fairly substantial accident, and one that was not easy to pinpoint and say, well, that was caused by this particular item. But Ferrari preparing as Michael gets his balaclava on, and would expect to see the Ferrari. It'll only be one Ferrari as well, because a lot of work going on in Rubens Barrichello's car right now. We expect to see just one Ferrari out on track in this final 1 hour practice on Friday.
Well, we saw most of the cars, well, all the cars on track earlier on. At one stage, Alex Young was doing a good job. It's good to see him back into Formula 1 again, as he was at Monza. Bruce Jones has caught up with him.
Alex Young standing here before the second Friday session. It looks like the wind's dropped a bit. When you went out this morning, everyone was faced with quite a strong wind down the start-finish straight into your face.
Yeah, it was quite strong, but it's not going to affect what we're going to do for the second session. We were running too much downforce in the first session anyway, so we're going to take off some more wing for the second session. Because
we saw quite a few black cars rotating this morning. You think without the wing you might surely that might make you more liable to spinning, or Mark was going around this morning.
Well, yeah, but I think that's mainly the track conditions. It was very slippery the first session, and towards the end of the session the grip got a little bit better. So as the track roughens up, it's going to the grip's going to come up, and we should be able to run less downforce comfortably.
Now, Paul Stoddart said this morning he's very pleased with your performance since you've come back from your break, that the break did you good. Does that lead us to presume you might be driving with the team next year in the race, or will you be possibly a testing role, or is that to be decided?
Oh, I don't know. I got to do a lot of thinking first. I mean, this year I've enjoyed this year, and in many ways it's been a great year for me. But it's been a real struggle this year. We've done, I think, 5 days total testing the whole year, and it's a struggle when you're trying to do things, and you're trying to learn and do things all in one day on a Friday. Friday's your test day. So, I got to think carefully, see what I want to do next year, what's going to help me best for my career.
Well, hope you tell us soon. Thanks very much, Alex.
Thanks.
So Alex Young, and there is another man whose future is not totally certain as yet, Takuma Sato. Jordan's going well though this morning, both Jordans in the top 6 so far. Honda-powered cars generally looking pretty rapid, but I have to say the Jordan's a little ahead in the overall lap times from BAR. Kimi Räikkönen we're looking at 9th fastest after the first hour, but again not putting in that many laps on that damp circuit early on.
No, and both Jordans in fact last year qualified in the top 10, with Joanna Lazy in 10th and Lazy in 9th and Trulli in 8th place too. Maybe something about this track seems to work particularly well for the Jordans. Just Ben, going back to Alex Young, it's easy to sometimes be harsh on a young guy like Alex Young, who probably isn't the next Michael Schumacher, Nevertheless, only 5 days testing. It is very tough indeed when you consider the amount of testing that someone like Kimi Raikkonen, who we're looking at, the drivers of the top teams, Ferrari drivers in particular, could test every day of the week if it was available to them. So the teams further down the field really do have to make up a huge amount of lost time when they come to a Grand Prix, and it really is very much a period when they go testing as well as go qualifying and practicing.
Yes, it makes life very difficult for those drivers further down the grid. As you can see, though, the temperatures here are climbing gradually. We started off at something like 19 degrees, now up to 23 degrees, so the weather conditions have improved here at Indianapolis, pretty much in the central part of America. It's about 3 hours drive south of Chicago, so this time of year, as we get into autumn, it can get quite chilly at this time of year, but actually conditions looking pretty good.
Well, I would say, 23 degrees ambient, 29 on the track. I don't think teams want any more or any less. That's, I think, very comfortable. It's comfortable for the fans that are out in America, they call them the bleachers. Those are the grandstands. Huge grandstand all the length of pit straight out of turns 3 and 4 all the way down through 1 and 2. Most impressive place to come and watch motor racing, be it IRL, be it NASCAR, or here this weekend, America's only Formula One World Championship Grand Prix.
Jarno Trulli then getting ready to come back out in the Renault, and both Renaults were running quite quickly in the early part of this morning's session, just dropped away a little bit towards the end after their excellent performance at Monza last time out. It's a great battle now that's going on in the Constructors' Championship, and it's really what we need to focus on in the last 2 Grand Prix. We've got Sauber on 11 points, if you remember, Jaguar having shot ahead of both Jordan and BAR on that last Grand Prix. They're on 8 points, Jordan on 7, BAR on 6. And Renault at the moment fairly comfortably in 4th place. They are some 9 points ahead of Sauber, so they should be fairly safe in 4th, but the battle behind them between Jaguar, Jordan and BAR and Sauber should be quite fun for the rest of the season, the last two.
Yes, 6th, 7th and 8th in the championship is going to be a very hard fought, and for someone like Jordan, who's going over to the customer Cosworth engine, which of course will be branded Ford Cosworth, the RS, in recognition of the range of product coming out of Ford these days, the top-of-the-range sport models. So very important because it relates ultimately to a lot of things, a lot of benefits, but particularly here at a Grand Prix circuit, the further you are up the team's points championship, the better the facilities you get to work in.
Yes, indeed. So all those points will make a difference this weekend, and the race will once again, I think, be hard fought in that midfield, or certainly ahead of the midfield between the likes of Jordan and Sauber. We're watching the Toyota though at the moment to Mika Salo. McNish is also on track, so both Toyotas the first to venture forth once again as we get going for this second 1 hour session in much improved conditions, and I'm sure we'll see the times tumble. Fastest time so far, remember, has been set by Michael Schumacher on a 1:15.188 despite only doing 4 laps. Fisichella second fastest after the first hour on a 1:15.493, and De La Rosa here, we're looking at him now, third fastest, just ahead of his teammate. Both Jaguars have been running quickly, and Michael Schumacher is definitely preparing to come back out.
Yes, Ferrari have had that 1 hour, well in fact it was 40 minutes between the end of part 1 of Friday practice and also the time taken to bring Barrichello's car in, so they clearly are sufficiently satisfied with what caused that incident. I think they probably feel they can pinpoint it fairly accurately. Nevertheless, you wonder when things go wrong, why is it always with Ruben Barrichello? Why was that incident not Michael Schumacher? Well, I have no answer for it, but just some people seem to have all the luck and some have a little bit less.
Oh, a little bit too quick into that one for Mika Salo. That's turning into turn 4 and just carried a bit too much speed in. We saw Fisichella run wide there earlier on in the first session. Salo kept it under control, but definitely lost the odd 1/10 of a second through doing that. We talked earlier on about Toyota and their first acquaintance with this Indianapolis circuit, of course. Mika Salo was here himself back in 2000 when he was driving for Sauber, but for Alan McNish, it is his first taste of this track.
And then just looking around, you can see the golf course in the background, but the amount of manicuring that's taken place on this Indy Grand Prix circuit, it really looks fantastic. And again, now that the weather has lifted, there's high cloud, lots of blue patches in the sky, and a great tribute to Tony George and the entire team at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Really, in their view, this is the heartland of motor racing on a global basis.
Well, it certainly has tremendous history. First opened in 1909, as we were hearing earlier on in the programme. And of course the home of the greatest race in the United States. Ralf Schumacher coming back out onto the circuit. His teammate Montoya, former winner of the Indy 500, won himself well over $1 million as a result of winning the Indy 500 back in 2000. It's always been a huge money race. Of course, in Formula One, always keep very quiet about the prize money, but it's just as crucial to the teams and the drivers sometimes on a share of the prize money, depending on their contracts. But not something that's publicised quite as much as it is in American racing.
No, I think it is very much an American phenomenon, because in every sport, be it football, baseball, basketball, golf, tennis, whatever, there's always a published prize list. The winner gets X amount of dollars, and American audiences relate to that because it's a country of people have got opportunities to go out and make themselves $1 million, and it's a great thing to see that in sport that they do publish this. Formula One has got a different philosophy. Whether that will ever change or not is, I think, probably a rather mute point.
So here comes Michael Schumacher then. First time we've seen the Ferrari on track for a long time, because we haven't seen a Ferrari out since Barrichello's accident in the first session. And in case you've tuned in slightly later to us today, you've got back from work to see what's been going on. Well, let me tell you that Barrichello had a big accident coming through turn 13, hit the wall. Something had gone wrong already, though. The tyre either had deflated or had come off the rim, or there was a problem with the rim. And Barrichello had a heavy accident, perfectly okay, car quite badly damaged. Session was stopped for a while they cleared it all up. And now we're back into the action, but Michael Schumacher, despite that, is fastest overall.
And Kimi Raikkonen didn't do a great deal of laps in that first part. McLaren very confident after a strong test last week in Barcelona. Revisions to the back end of the car. We heard the team principal, Martin Whitmarsh, because he actually runs the team on a day-to-day basis. Ron Dennis has got other responsibilities, so Martin is fundamentally in charge of running the team. And they feel that the progress that they've made with this car from the beginning of the year in Australia to here in Indianapolis is massive, and it's not simply on the car itself. Mercedes-Benz have done an enormous amount of work to try and find the horsepower that the team, and I'm sure Mercedes themselves, felt they lacked at the beginning of the year.
There's Takuma Sato, we saw taking a little trip onto the grass. Sensibly didn't try and put it back onto the tarmac too quickly. It is very wet, that grass. It's exactly where Ralf Schumacher went off earlier and took the rear wing off the Williams. The other incidents that we've seen some damage in so far today, we've seen a number of spins, but here is Ralf back on track again. New rear wing fitted, no problems at all. Cross the line, good time, 15.291, just a fraction slower than Michael's time as Sato this time.
Yes, and I think he may have had contact with that tyre barrier, because he wasn't going to turn the car on that wet grass. So I suspect there he is, his nose buried in the tyre wall. Takuma Sato finally pays the penalty for being, well, just simply enthusiastic.
Yes, not the right time perhaps.
Michael!
Oh, Michael Schumacher even makes a mistake.
Yes, and that's coming out of turn 7. A corner we haven't seen too many incidents on so far over the running that we've had. Michael Schumacher gets it wrong, but keeps the car running. There is Takuma Sato's Jordan buried in the barrier, and I'm sure that the corner workers will want to get that car removed as quickly as possible. It is not ideal, bearing in mind the number of cars that have been off in turn 8 to leave it there. Look, you can see he had the wheels locked in. Well, a harmless nudge into that tyre barrier. Just again, over enthusiasm from the young Japanese driver, trying to push too hard too early on this set of tyres, and a harsh penalty, but he'll learn from it, and he's growing rapidly.
Yeah, great shame for him. He tried to pump the brakes, bit of cadence braking going on, but it wasn't going to make much difference when he was on the wet grass. Let's see what happened to Michael here.
Well, this is coming in to turn 7. Again, just not enough rear end grip. The back comes around, quickly lifts the hand clutch, gets it all under control and continues on. And the Ferrari team wondering, well, what have we done? We've had one car brought in at the back of a wrecker. We've got Michael, our world champion, spinning. It's not Friday the 13th, is it?
Well, Sato's out of the car, but a bit disgruntled with that. He won't be able to get back out. Look at the time. Michael Schumacher has been fastest and is fastest again, although he's only on the first part of the lap so far. But it looks as though Michael's going to beat his earlier target time. The yellow flags are out, of course, so he may have to slow down on this sector.
Yes, he is, because that's the point on the track where Takuma Sato's Jordan, well, it has been removed, so a good job by those corner workers, but he has to wait until that yellow flag sector of track has been cleared. That will be when the yellow lights or the yellow dots on the top of the screen, he just backs off. Wonder if there's traffic ahead of him, or is he deciding just to, I think he's about to try and commence another lap as David Coulthard. He will find the same problem as he is going through right now, turn 6 and then into turn 7, where Michael Schumacher did have that relatively harmless spin a lap ago.
Finished third here last year, David Coulthard. The year before he actually picked up a penalty for a jump start, managed to fight his way back to 5th. He's also going through that yellow flag area, still got the yellows out even though they've moved the car. And there you can see just how tight this section, this last sequence of corners before they come back onto the oval in the wrong direction is. Very tight and twisty. But then, of course, when you consider this as a venue for the American Grand Prix, John, there's been an awful lot of much tighter and much more twisty American Grand Prix venues through some of the car parks, etc.
Well, I think the one that sticks out most in my memory is, of course, the track in Las Vegas in the car park of Caesar's Palace Hotel. And literally it was sinuous, it wound itself in and out, literally in a series of loops, and with a perimeter loop that brought it all back together again. It seemed a strange place to have a Grand Prix, but they held 2 there, 81 and 82. Whether we'll ever go back to Las Vegas, not to that context, but to a permanent racetrack. There has been a permanent racetrack, but principally it is used as an oval circuit. Whether they would have a road track in much the same way as Indy does here, I think it's probably not something to see in the future.
Michael Schumacher goes faster and is fastest overall now by half a second once again, a 1:14.664. That's just over a second slower than the best on the Friday last year, which was set by Mika Häkkinen. So the time's improving for Ferrari, but what about everybody else? Well, Ralf Schumacher has moved up to 2nd place, and Fisichella still down in 3rd. We saw Takuma Sato go off just a little while ago. Nick Damon has asked Gary Anderson what happened.
Anything if the car is shit either, are you? Were you going to car pilot?
Gary Anderson, it was all going a bit too well, really, wasn't it? 2nd and 6th, and then Takuma kind of lost it.
Yeah, it was a bit really, but you know, it's so slippy off the line there, and he's learning the track a bit, so you have to keep pushing. Once you get in the grass, he's just a passenger, so not too much damage, I don't think.
So what was the secret of the great performance this morning then?
Oh, skill from the backroom boys, I suppose. No, it's been okay for a while. This track, because of all the slow speed corners, is reasonably good. Fizzy's very good as far as being a fairly finesse type driver. The engine power's a bit better now, and obviously all those things have come together a little bit. So hopefully we can keep it up tomorrow.
The wind's coming and going. Is that a problem?
Yeah, it does change it. It's a bit of a headwind down the straight, but the infield itself so slow, the wind doesn't really affect the cars too much there. But it'll slow down the speeds a bit on the straight. But it's the same for everybody, so life's like that.
Gary, thanks a lot.
Well, Gary Anderson keeping us up to date. In fact, Sato with the fastest speed trap figure, 331 kilometers per hour. Here we are riding with Alex Young through the banked corner at turn 13. And there you can see the speed that's carried, the engine flat out for this long distance, and then down into turn 1. Trying to keep it as neat and tidy as possible through here, and starting the infield section. Well, Eddie's not terribly excited about everything that's going on at the moment.
No, he's sort of fairly laid back, Eddie, and taking it all very much within his stride. Enjoys being in North America, I think, almost as much as he enjoys being in Italy. Has a home in Miami Beach, and tries to get over there pretty regularly. He likes the lifestyle, and not that he gets into the training regime maybe in quite the way some do, but he uses actually sport activity, your leisure sport activity, jet skiing. Of course, a great swimmer in his youth, swam for Northern Ireland as I was going to say underage swimmer, but as a teenager. So he loves Miami and that whole Miami Beach lifestyle.
Let's just watch it at work here. Oh, a little bit of a mistake from McNish into turn number 6. Locked that left front. Now, bit of a straight section here. Sometimes see overtaking into the next left-hander turn 8. This is where the next section where we've seen some of the mistakes today.
The difficulty is that there's a very low grip surface in this infield part of the track, and it misleads you, it beguiles you into thinking there is more grip than in reality there is, and that's why we're seeing so many cars go off, particularly into turn 8, and also we've seen a couple go off round 4, 5 and 6.
And it's all about horsepower here. Let's see where this puts him. It's a 117.4. Alan Manish is down in 18th place at the moment. That gives us an idea of how this track looks, though, and the variation that you get between that long section where they're flat out and the tight and twiddly stuff in between.
In the meantime, on board with Jacques Villeneuve, an improvement in first and second sectors. Villeneuve right now in 16th place, so the Canadian should see a further improvement, and let's see where he leaps up to. But he does a pretty good job. He's got a big leap up to third.
Excellent performance. And that's a big improvement for the BAR. See how he uses the curb a little more perhaps than McNish through that first section, that first S-bend, turns 1 and 2. And we do see overtaking into that. And of course, one thing you do have to be just aware of with the team setups, they often set the cars up quite differently aerodynamically between qualifying and the race, because for qualifying you want the ultimate lap, but in the race you need to be fast along that section, run relatively less downforce, less drag, because otherwise other people will be able to overtake you on the run down towards the first corner.
Yes, and I think it's in that area where Jordan actually do a really good job here, because they don't have the out-and-out horsepower of some of the teams ahead of them, though Honda have made huge strides over the period of this season. So they've got to find that balance between aerodynamic efficiency, but at the same time have good mechanical grip. And that's the balance they seem to have struck successfully in their time coming to Indianapolis.
Villeneuve just coming through there and still stays out on the lap. He's third fastest, but his mid-sector was quite a lot slower there, so I'm surprised he stayed out. But there he is, across the line. Michael Schumacher still fastest, then it's Ralph. Now Villeneuve third, as we say, Fisichella fourth, Trulli fifth, De La Rosa sixth, then Irvine, Montoya, Sato, and Nick Heidfeld in the Sauber currently 10th. There's Montoya, has had a spin.
Yes, that's it, up at turn 1. I saw a puff of smoke just before Villeneuve came into turn 1. I could see it was Montoya, but I didn't realise he'd actually gone off track, or just maybe over-braked himself into turn 1, but he's back on track now. And here we see it. Well, there is the blue smoke that I saw. Montoya just, oh well, not much grip on the black stuff. Forget about what's on the green. So just too keen, too quick in. And there's Jacques Villeneuve.
A little bit of communication between Montoya and the Williams pits, but no major dramas. Car's still running okay, and he can continue. And there'll be plenty of support for Juan Pablo this weekend. A lot of Colombians will be turning up, I'm sure, in the grandstand to see exactly what's going on. And there, good to see that down in the pits at the moment, Rubens Barrichello making his way over in civvies to the Ferrari pit wall. Our man Peter Winter right there, of course, and hopefully we might get a chance to hear from Rubens in a moment or two. I wonder if they've learnt any more as to the cause of that accident earlier on.
Olivier Panis, teammate to Jacques Villeneuve, in his penultimate race for VAR before he makes the transition over to Toyota. And one would assume, I know Toyota maybe will not actually call it, but would you call it Olivier Panis your number one driver? Cristiano D'Amato is the driver that has been penciled in as teammate to Olivier Panis. I think he's number one, certainly in the short term.
Yeah, I would think so, with his experience. And certainly we've seen Olivier Panis driving well this year. Just watch him as he comes over the line. Let's see if this moves him up. 16th at the moment. It brings him, well, actually it keeps him in 16th. 16.468, so a little slower than his previous best. Good top speed. And now through turns 1 and 2 safely as well. And Juan Pablo Montoya has made it back into the pits himself. Interesting. I think if Toyota do go down the route of choosing Cristiano D'Amato, I mean, it is an interesting choice that they've gone for. Olivier Panis, very experienced. D'Amato, of course, will have to relearn everything. He's raced in Europe in the past, but he's got to learn a good number of the circuits. It's going to be, I think it'll be quite a tough second year for Toyota.
It's certainly a very interesting choice. I think there were other people. I mean, one of those that was very much in the frame, and I think will feel very disappointed was Antonio Pizzonia, who was very, very impressive last week, testing a Jaguar in Barcelona. Has done a stunning job for the Williams BMW team, testing for them. And somebody who's got more expertise and experience in Formula One cars and more expertise and experience in Grand Prix circuits. So Toyota must have been mightily impressed when D'Amata did that run way back in the middle of the summer at Paul Ricard to give him the commitment to come into Formula One, because it is going to be a learning year for D'Amata. And Olivier Panis would probably be better off being paired with somebody who can share the load of information gathering and help Toyota move forward.
Well, of course, the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher, fastest in this session, but it is the only Ferrari out there after Rubens had his accident earlier on, and indeed Peter Winter has caught up with Barrichello.
Rubens, this has got to be a very, very frustrating Friday for you.
Well, in a way it is, because we're not learning much about the car, but I trust my teammate. He can do a good job, so we should be fine.
You think he's got a reasonable amount of experience, do you? Think he can set the car up okay?
Oh yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's just unfortunate that you know, both cars running, you can obviously get a lot of information and share and then grab a little bit more. But right now, my car had a pretty big hit, so just learning from the other side of the wall. Tomorrow should be fine.
Do you think tomorrow you will run the spare car or the rebuilt race car?
I don't know. I think they're going to build a new car, to be honest. So
around a new chassis, you mean?
Around a new chassis, yeah. But it's we're still there to learn what happened. I mean, something happened, or on the rear suspension, or the tire, or the wheel. Something broke loose because the car had a sudden loose rear.
Were you going reasonably quickly at the time, or were you on just developing speed? Were you on an outlap?
I mean, in the it is an easy corner flat, so I could have been at 3 or 4 kilometers faster just because of the exit of turn 11. But in here, it was flat in 7th already.
Your old race engineer, Gary Anderson, has suggested that maybe there's a bit of a problem here running quite low tyre pressures, waiting for the pressures to come up, and the effect of the banking when the pressures are down. Would you agree with that?
Well, I could agree with that, but it could be the fact that the track was a little bit damp, and the tyre pressures went down because of that. But we still have to understand what happened. I'm not so sure it's purely the tyre. Something happened around that area.
Okay, well, good to see you.
Well, that was Peters talking to Rubens just a few moments ago, and he's still got a smile on his face, so that's good to see. But of course, he has lost some valuable track time. We're riding at the moment with Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Sauber.
There you get an idea as to how close Frentzen is to the wheel, the steering wheel in the Sauber. There's only so much that Sauber can do, as Frentzen really has to fight the Sauber. And I mean, a driver likes to have a driving position where he can get a good angle between his forearm and his upper arm. In this case, it's probably quite an acute angle, and in any situation that's not too much of a problem, except in these ones where he's really having to make very rapid corrections on the steering wheel, and he's probably finding his elbows are coming into contact with the side of the monocoque, and he'll probably have a few bruises by the time he finishes this afternoon. And look at that, he's having a lot of work keeping that Sauber pointing in the right direction.
Yeah, a lot of oversteer for Frentzen. We don't often see, he's not the sort of driver that normally drives with a lot of oversteer. You don't see him applying lots of opposite locks, so I don't think he's particularly got this car to his liking as yet, and it might take a little while. Of course, working with different engineers, everybody coming at it from slightly different angles, so he's got to work hard on that. And currently he's down in 15th place. His teammate Nick Heidfeld is so far 8th fastest. And Frentzen, of course, very switched on technically. He talked to us in the break, and already his mind is very much on how he can improve this car, what he needs to do to make it, give him that confidence that he can really push.
Yes, if you think back to Spa-Francorchamps and to some degree at Monza, Sauber not as competitive in relation to the people that they're normally around or ahead of. And I think what you're seeing here is a little bit of the same, that they're trying to sneak downforce off the car to get good top speed, but the penalty is the car is not very comfortable. It's a nervous car right now in the middle, or the more likely the low speed corners that comprise the infield of this circuit.
Meanwhile, inside the McLaren pit, Kimi Raikkonen, currently 13th fastest in this session, just 16 laps completed. And that compares to 28 laps or so by the likes of Alex Young and Giancarlo Fisichella. So not a great many, but then nor has Michael Schumacher done many laps. He's only done 12, he's fastest overall. And there's the man just coming through the picture that was second earlier on. And look at Michael, he's up on the pace again.
Yes, he looked pretty quick as he came around behind. And in fact, the time in that first sector indicates that the purple, which indicates that's the fastest of all we've seen, is running behind Fisichella. It's interesting, going back to what Barrichello was saying, they might build the car up around a new tub. Of course, they cannot use the spare car, the designated spare car, which is Rubens's anyway, because that will only become available once qualifying begins. So if the chassis is questionable, what they will have is a spare tub, a three-quarter built tub, 0.6 of a second, Ben. This is going to be a 1:13 point something lap as Fisichella peels off to go into the pits, and Michael continues. This is lap 13 over the 2 sessions.
So just how fast is this lap going to be from Michael Schumacher across the line? And it is a 1:14.0, just outside the 1:13s by just 72 hundredths of a second, and it gives him nearly 0.6 of a second advantage over the nearest opposition, Ralf Schumacher. Irvine's been running well so far, he's 8th at the moment.
And he also has done a personal best in that second sector, so Irvine would look to improve on a 15.589. And what's he got? 15? No, he hasn't. It's lost it. So that personal best in the middle sector didn't do anything, and the final sector at the time drifted away.
Niki Lauda still giving nothing away in terms of driver choice for next season. Mika Salo's just popped up to 3rd fastest to the Toyota, so that's an excellent improvement. Still 1.3 seconds off Michael's time, but good improvement from Salo ahead of Villeneuve, Fisichella and Jarno Trulli. And there is Fisichella in the pits.
Yes, interesting. 3rd, 4th and 5th. Toyota, Honda. Are we seeing a resurgence of Honda? And are we seeing what Toyota is fully capable of? Straight line speed, still Sato quickest, Fisichella 2nd quickest, Villeneuve 3rd. So again, Honda fastest 3 cars in a straight line. But don't forget, take off the downforce, that's where the top speed comes from. Can you make it match the lap time? That will be the key to this racetrack.
Slightly slower second lap there from Michael Schumacher. Makes you wonder, with the Japanese Grand Prix coming up in a couple of weeks, whether the Honda and Toyota engineers are really building up their efforts towards that one, because we are seeing some good improvements in engine horsepower by the looks of things, particularly from Honda. Toyota have had a strong engine all season long, and this is another strong engine. It is the Ford Cosworth unit, of course. Across the line, not a particularly quick lap from Eddie Irvine this time around, but a good boost for the team with their performances so far in this session.
So up round turns 3, we've got Raikkonen and Ralf Schumacher. Raikkonen makes his way past. It was here in this corner, this is the exit of turn 4, where Michael Schumacher looks so mighty. I mean, coming through there, the car, you could see the energy of the car was the build-up of loads, the lateral loads, that the grip that the Ferrari and Bridgestone package has got. And there, I think, just exemplifies it. Not quite the same from Raikkonen in the McLaren with the Michelin package. As we cut back to DC, and DC down in 12th place, 21 laps completed. And, well, we've got just over half the session remaining.
Keep an eye on McLaren. They're not really featuring at the moment, but I think that they're just playing their cards close to the chest at the moment. Coulthard down in 12th, Raikkonen in 14th, but they always seem to go well here. They've had a good setup for Indianapolis the last 2 years, and there should be no reason why they shouldn't be quick. That's Alex Young spinning.
Yes, Alex Young once again finds a bit of grass, manages to stay off. Again, down at turn 8. At least he does a good job and kept it off the tyre wall. That's what took out Takuma Sato. He has had to conclude his day. So one Japanese driver in the pits, one Malay driver back on track.
Yeah, he'll be making his way in for the car to be checked over, but it should be relatively undamaged after that. But let's take a look and see what happened here once again. Coming down, this is the straight on the infield section, coming down towards turn number 8.
Well, it's all about turning in on the brakes, not enough rear grip, and around she comes. And that's part penalty, because we heard they took off downforce because they weren't quick enough in a straight line. So you take off the downforce, where it's going to penalise you is in the slowest of the corners.
Panis has just had a spin as well. Oh, I see.
Well, there's a sympathy. He followed one of the Renaults across the grass, so looking to see if we can find who it was. It was a moment or two ago.
It was Jenson Button. That is Jenson Button who went off there. So the two of them, as you say, going off in tandem. back on the track, no damage done. It's again that once you get on the grass, you've got no chance of controlling it. This is the work going on in the Ferrari pit, and it looks as though it's still a wrapped-up car which has come out of the crate, presumably.
They would have brought that in there, whatever they call them, the pack horses, or the pallets that they carry all the cars on, and of course they have a built-up spare monocoque, which is permitted, and that will then be built up into Ruben's race car. And the safest thing to do is just to take Ruben's car that was damaged, ship it back. It'll probably be shipped back sometime over the weekend back to Ferrari, and depending on how much damage there is to it, either repaired or designated as a spare for the test team, or maybe a regular test team car.
3 Boeing 747s worth of equipment is transported when the Formula One cars go across the Atlantic, so plenty of equipment has to be transported, and Ferrari will be glad of all the spare bits and pieces after the accident for Rubens Barrichello earlier on today. David Coulthard heading through that first section of the infield.
One of the teams, they're on a 2 Grand Prix trip. It's one of the toughest of the year because they have to first of all pack up to come out here, and there's a big rush to get back from Monza, get the car stripped down, and in some cases repainted. And there we see Jenson Button's gone off also at turn 8. The cars were then taken to Gatwick Airport, then transported into Europe, and then flown over here. They arrived on Monday. After this race, they go straight to Japan, to Suzuka, and that's why Ferrari are very keen to ensure that car that was damaged gets straight back to Maranello to be checked out or replaced.
Now, as Coulthard backs off a little bit, we saw Jacques Villeneuve set a pretty good pace earlier on. He's currently 4th fastest. That should make David Richards pretty happy. He's talking to Peter Windsor.
David Richards on the pit wall of BAR Honda. David, it's looking like a bit of a power race between the 2 Japanese engines at the moment. Honda looking very good in a straight line.
Yeah, so far so good, but you know, it's really working out which is the best tyre at the moment, getting the setup right, so still a lot more work to be done.
What a difference a few weeks make if we look back at the Belgian Grand Prix and what was going on there and how it's looking now.
No, Honda have really done a great job in the last few months. It's not just in a few weeks, it's work that's gone in all year, and now we've got very good engines for tomorrow, both cars, and when we get to Suzuka we'll be racing a Step 3 engine as well.
Thank you very much.
Well, no great surprise there that the Japanese will save their best till last with Suzuka coming up in a couple of weeks.
And I think also the fact that they're going to be racing on Japanese tyres, Bridgestone tyres of course. Those tyres, if they were being used in American racing series, would be designated Firestones, but Bridgestone is what we call them on Formula One, and of course at Suzuka, very, very important indeed. There's no desire for loss of faith with a Michelin victory on their home turf.
But as you were saying earlier on today, John, the Ferraris, with the performance of their car, very unlikely to be beaten at Suzuka, except in strange circumstances. Of course, weather can be changeable this time of year, or indeed a little bit later than this when we get to Japan, so we'll have to wait and see. Fisichella, let's see whether this is any improvement. Well, he's 5th fastest. He's been consistently quick. He and Villeneuve, virtually identical times.
And that was a personal fastest lap for the young Italian. So he improved in time, didn't improve in position, but it brought him within thousandths of a second of Jacques Villeneuve. So a real battle, and this battle isn't so much about what we're going to see today, it'll be about what happens on Sunday, because right now BAR are 1 point behind Jordan in the Manufacturers' Championship. BAR on 6, Jordan on 7, and there's a lot to play for between those two teams.
And of course the battle between these two, Honda and Toyota, is crucial, and in America both are heavily involved in American motorsport, aren't they? Toyota has done very well in the last couple of years in Champ Car racing. Both Honda and Toyota getting very involved now in the IRL series, the series that races here at Indianapolis in the Indy 500. So that confrontation between Honda and Toyota is worldwide, not just in Formula One, but in American motorsport as well.
Well, a lot of the fans that will come here will be very much focusing on the two teams that have got Honda, or the Toyota team and the two Honda-powered teams, because that's what they're most familiar with. Having Ferrari, BMW or Mercedes-Benz, they were involved, particularly Mercedes-Benz in the past, but you know, the homebrew favourites, well, they'll watch BAR, Jordan and Toyota, I'm certain.
Well, let's get back to the action on track at the moment. Fisichello's just improved again slightly. He's gone 3rd fastest now to move him ahead of both Villeneuve and Sarlo. So it's Honda ahead of Toyota once again. We're looking at Nick Heidfeld here. He, of course, runs with Ferrari power effectively in the back of the Sauber, the Petronas engine, based on the Ferrari engine. And that's what they'll be enjoying next year, of course, is the current Ferrari engine in the back of their 2003 chassis.
And this should see a further improvement for Nick Heidfeld. Right now in 9th on a 15.592. And I think he's going to go 6th, 7th, to be about where he should put himself. 2nd.
Oh, wow.
Well, there's a bit of a out of the blue time. 15.260. It's a long way away. It's 0.8 of a second away from Michael Schumacher. But what a fill-up for Peter Sauber and his team. And there's a target behind Harold Frentzen to aim himself at.
Yeah, good effort that from Nick Heidfeld. And Bridgestones are looking good, I have to say. Look at the efforts of Jordan and of BAR. But we've got some Michelin runners up there as well. Ralf Schumacher is 3rd and Mika Salo is 5th. So there seems to be a pretty comparable performance at the moment.
Well, there's wee Jackie. Sir Jackie Stewart, of course, consultant to Jaguar and responsible for looking after the guests of HSBC and making sure that they know precisely what goes on within the team that they sponsor, but also as a general sort of what's going on in Formula One.
So Irvine about to go on to flying lap. Current speed across the speed trap, 319.2. So that's a little off the best, but that's normally been set with the benefit of another car ahead of you with a little bit of a tow. And Irvine currently down in 9th place, just behind his teammate De La Rosa. But these two Jags have been featuring strongly inside the top 10 throughout the 2 free practice sessions here today.
And an improvement for Irvine at 23.151, and that's not that far away, 0.2 of a second slower than Michael Schumacher in that first sector. Now, still a lot of the lap to go, and it's into this technical part of the lap, down into turn 8, where so many have been caught out. Well, no problem for Irvine, into 8. Now this slow, now that water that was backed up on the left-hand side of the track, that's all gone. Then out of 10, and then into 11, which leads on to the quickest part of the racetrack. You can see just on the screen he was 0.2 away. He's lost half a second to Schumacher in that intermediate part of the racetrack, and that's the part where the Ferrari, well, it's been everywhere. Strong.
Across the line, 2nd fastest for Eddie Irvine. He displaces Nick Heidfeld then, and it's only Michael Schumacher that's faster than him, and he's on Michelin tyres. So once again, we're seeing very comparable performances between Michelin users and Bridgestone runners. Irvine scored 2 points here last year, finished 5th for Jaguar, but they only qualified 14th, and they'll be hoping to be further up on the grid this time.
Well, Alex Young, does he do? Well, he does a good job. He keeps it from the spin. Does he keep it on the racetrack? Yes, he does.
So far so good for the Malaysian. And we now switch our attention to Mika Salo. Now, he was 3rd a little while ago, but we've seen a number of improvements recently, so that means he's down to 6th now, but it's still a good effort considering it's their first run here.
Yes, he's probably going to be in that first sector, something about 3, maybe 0.4 away from Schumacher's time. Well, that's in the 2nd sector, and that's fractionally more than Irvine was in the same part of track. But Salo, currently in 6th place, might see an improvement in position. He's only got 1,000th of a second between his place in 6th and that of Fisichella in 5th, so he should go 5th, assuming that last sector is up to scratch.
Across the line he goes.
No, he doesn't.
No great improvement at all for Mika Salo, so he stays in 6th place. We've got some 8 cars on track at the moment, and included in that is this man, Pedro de la Rosa. You can hear the traction control working on the exit of the tight corners, making the engine sound a little bit rough running. So that's as the ignition is cut to each of the cylinders just to reduce the amount of power effectively and avoid the rear wheels spinning. Now he's onto the flat-out section around the bowl, if you like, of this Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And an interesting view as we look upside down at De La Rosa. Across the line, no improvement, he stays 9th.
Well, further down the field, Heinz Harold Frentzen clearly getting the message that the Sauber is no bad race car around Indianapolis, and his first sector time within 1/10 of a second of his teammate Heidfeld. Heidfeld 3rd quickest, Frentzen right now in 17th.
Yeah, so this could be a good improvement coming up for Heinz Harold Frentzen in a moment or two. Meanwhile, Ralf Schumacher's on track. There in the background, you could just see Heinz Harold Frentzen, in fact, not far behind his fellow German. There is Ralf. And so far he's in 4th place, put it in a quickish time earlier on in this session, hasn't been out for a little while, but has completed a total of 25 laps today.
So we see the Williams go through, but watching to see where Heinz-Harald Frentzen is. He's behind Ralf Schumacher. So Ralf begins, he concludes the lap, but watch for Frentzen. Frentzen was 17th, he now goes 8th. And Frentzen getting into the zone, close to his younger teammate.
Yes, only a couple of tenths of a second slow. We've got a very, very close section now from Heidfeld in third place on a 15.2 down to, well, all the way down, let's have a look, down to almost to the back. They're covered by a second, apart from Alex Young. We then have from third, Heidfeld to 18th place. They are covered by less than a second.
Well, it's going to be very tough, because if you happen to be at the sharp end where, let's say, Heidfeld is in the 15.2, or the blunt end where Mark Webber is in 17th and a 15.9, you're talking 7/10 of a second, and you blink and that's all over.
So very, very close times indeed, and that's pretty interesting when you think about how long they're on full throttle here. All the different engine manufacturers, all the different aerodynamic setups that we see, and yet they're all so closely matched in terms of time.
Jacques Villeneuve ought to improve. Is quickest in first and second sector, currently 7th, 1:15.432. So the Canadian, who knows this place better, going in the opposite direction, goes third.
Good effort once again from Villeneuve, and once again we still have, well, we have all 4 Honda-powered cars, and now the fastest across the speed trap. Sato, Fisichella, Villeneuve and Panis, so that's pretty impressive statistics for Honda. They'll be pleased with that, and lots of power and lots, they hope, of reliability. And in fact, Nick has got a chance to talk to Ottmar Snafnau of Honda. Let's see what he reckons on the performance of today.
Snafnau from Honda, it's your personal home Grand Prix, and Honda made a big commitment to Indy these days, both in Formula 1 and also the IRL next year.
Yeah, I love coming back to Indy. I've been here many years in the past, steeped with history and tradition, and very, very good race for Honda as well. Looking forward to IRL next year and continuing in Formula 1.
Because the good news over the past couple of weeks is nothing's blown up, so obviously you've sorted those problems from Belgium out.
Yeah, we found the solution to the problems that we had at Spa. Monza is another engine breaker, and we had all 4 cars come home in Monza, scored a point. This year, the long straight can also be difficult on engines, but hopefully we'll go well this weekend and score more points.
And you have enough qualifying engines for all 4 drivers, I hear. Is the race engine the same as Monza?
Race engine is the same as Monza. The qualifying engine is quite a considerable step up. And yes, all 4 drivers will have them this weekend, which is great.
Thanks, Ottmar.
Thank you.
So interesting to hear that, and of course they won't be using that qualifying engine today. They will change engines overnight and put in the qualifying engines for tomorrow. So we could expect to see even better speed trap figures come tomorrow.
Yes, again, I think in qualifying you might see that the speeds that we're getting now, still Takuma Sato quickest in a straight line. Sato sitting out in the pits after that little indiscretion earlier in the session. Nonetheless, it'll all be about lap time when it comes to the 1 hour of qualifying on Saturday, rather than out-and-out straight line speed. But it's important, you can't just sort of crank the wing on to the detriment. And as Pat Simmons told us earlier, you could actually go with a fairly low downforce setup, or a high downforce setup, or even a middling downforce setup, and pretty much get a similar lap time. The key is going to be how you can make use of your tyres on a 1 flying lap time. That will make the difference. Horsepower will help, but it'll be the tyre that will determine it.
Just looking down on the screens a moment ago, we saw Montoya sitting around, not looking as though he's very ready to come back out onto the track. He's down in 12th. And just wondering if there's something going on. Peter, I think, might have some more for us on that.
A little bit, Ben, not a lot. Apparently there's some sort of engine drama. It doesn't look that bad, but a lot of BMW engineers peering at it, as you can see. Juan Pablo actually laughing at the moment. I must say he's got quite a nice garage area here, because he's got a sort of terrace bit over here where his fiancée and family can hang out, and as you can see, he's got his overalls rolled down in his usual fashion and winding up the mechanics a bit. No real urgency about anything, but yes, obviously some sort of engine problem with the Montoya car, but as I say, I don't think he's too worried about it.
Okay, well, we're just looking now at Michael Schumacher on track because he's just set very fast first and second sector times. We're going to see a new fastest lap coming up from Michael Schumacher, and he will be in the 1:13s this time, surely, because he's well up everywhere.
Yes, I mean, I think that last sector is almost obligatory there. 1:13.5, half a second faster. Now we're getting down to business. This is where we expected Ferrari certainly to be, coming up to the conclusion of Friday practice. And Michael Schumacher still relatively few laps. That was lap 23 over the 2 sessions
so
to date.
One step for TC option race. Shall we do that now from your tires? We'll keep it like it is, no?
And Ben, what's frightening is he is 1.4 seconds, that's Michael Schumacher, faster than this man Eddie Irvine, who is currently second. Now Irvine's improving first and second, so Irvine might close that 1.4 second gap down. But I mean, 1.4 seconds might as well be 1.4 years.
Yeah, but it's good to see the Jaguars back up there again. Let's just see what the time is. 14.1. Still half a second slower than Michael, but that's a lot quicker than anybody else has done so far today.
Almost 9/10 of a second faster on that last lap for Eddie Irvine. And in fact, Irvine and Michael Schumacher both on identical laps over these two sessions.
Well, there's been so much work at Jaguar this year, aerodynamic work to try and improve the car after the disaster and the morale loss they must have suffered early in this year when they realised the new car actually produced less downforce than the old one. They've worked their way through that, they've come up with this new suspension, and it really does seem to be working.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. It's the chassis itself, which is not a great chassis, but they've done a good bandage job on it. They've got proper front suspension that works. They've got proper rear suspension that doesn't flex. They've got Michelin tires, which will work properly when the rest of the car works properly. But when you've got a car that's like a floppy lettuce leaf, it doesn't matter what you do.
Well, he's a bit slower on this lap. I wonder if he'll stay out there or whether he'll come in. He might just be doing a couple of laps run here. No, he is coming in indeed. Slower lap, fast into the pit lane entrance, and then hard on the brakes. They're braking on the curve. You can see the discs glowing bright red as he comes into the pits down to that speed limit.
He did actually improve on that first sector on this in lap. So clearly Jaguar's performance, we could have confirmed that. I think at Monza it was not a fluke. They've genuinely got pace and it's coming at the right time, and that confirmation from Ford that the future of the team is secure. Great news for every racing fan, I would say, a fan of Jaguar or otherwise around the world.
And between 8, 9, the south breakdown just tweeted off the rears.
So a little more analysis from Eddie. Sounds like he's got the odd braking problem, or unless it's on the downshift, locking the rears somewhat. De La Rosa's just gone 7th fastest to back up Irvine's performance, but he is over a second slower at the moment. But of course they could well be on very different fuel loads, and that's always the hidden part of a Friday session. We never know how much fuel each car has on board, and often Williams in particular running with plenty of fuel, so the fact that they're down in 6th and 14th place at the moment, don't discount Williams when it comes to qualifying tomorrow.
Well, David Coulthard just under 9/10 of a second down, but he's got personal bests in the first and second sectors. So McLaren again, going through methodically a routine. They don't get spooked into trying to throw fresh tyres on, take the fuel out, get a time. What happens on Friday is not about being fast, it's about doing your homework. Coulthard and McLaren have done their homework, and they're now up to 3rd quickest.
Some 8/10 slower than the Jaguar of Irvine, but still much improved performance from the McLarens. They've gone 3rd and 4th. Raikkonen on a 14.986, so separated by just a few hundredths of a second, these two. Villeneuve is still 5th, Heidfeld 6th, Ralf Schumacher 7th, then De La Rosa and Fisichella, with Mika Salo currently 10th fastest.
Well, a little launch control. Well, that one actually was more wheel spin than launch control, just laying a bit of rubber. Hans-Harald Frentzen, fastest or personal best in first sector, currently in 11th place, and the teammate Heidfeld in 6th.
Big big rev drop as it changes into top gear there. You can really hear the change in engine notes.
But Ben, he's gone ahead of Nick Heidfeld, so Frentzen now quicker than his teammate. So Sauber's 6th and 7th, separated by about a 1/10 of a second.
Getting to grips with the car. So many systems on the cars now, with automatic upshift and automatic downshift if you want it, traction control, and of course he's got to adapt to all of the slight idiosyncrasies of those systems on this particular car.
Yes, but of course he is familiar with the Ferrari-based engine, because last year when he jumped into the Prost with that Acer-badged Ferrari engine, he was familiar with the characteristics and all the goodies that you get when you buy that Ferrari package.
Yes, so that gives him a little advantage. Current top speed there from Ralf Schumacher, a good 327 kilometers per hour. So about 204 miles per hour across the speed trap as we're looking inside the Renault pit. Jarno Trulli, so he's been working quite hard. Currently down in 12th place. Jenson Button, his teammate, where is he currently at the moment? He's a bit further down, he's 17th.
And Jarno Trulli, one of the fittest men in Formula 1. Don't know about his stamina, but certainly his fitness is not in question. He also, I believe, or he has the desire to take part in the New York Marathon. 26 miles and some number of yards around Manhattan and the Bronx, Brooklyn, whatever. So a very enthusiastic trainer is Jarno Trulli.
Yes, very, very fit indeed. Frentzen's made it back into the pits once again. A lot of work going on there as he tries to adapt the car to his own style.
Just got a little bit of understeer, a little bit too much. I just big understeer in turn 7. Just saw my time that lost a lot of time there. I lost about 2/10 in this turn 7, and I did carry on turn 8.
Pretty accurate feedback, he knows how much time he's lost. Just an interesting point, German driver, like Heidfeld, of course, within the Swiss-based team, but communicating in English. Of course, all the teams are international and not all Swiss engineers, but usually you find that English is the language spoken between driver and engineers.
Yeah, very much so. There are certain terms or expressions that just don't have a German or an Italian or a French translation, and so understeer is understeer, oversteer is oversteer, and there are other words which of course are international in terms of description of what a car handles like.
Oh, there we are, riding on board with Jenson Button. Our mirror camera looking at Jenson from that left-hand driver's mirror, and as he comes out of the sunlight into the shadow once again through the turn 13 area past these huge grandstands. Fantastic atmosphere, of course, created once they're filled with people, and he moves up, he goes to 13th, so that's a slight improvement. He was in 17th, picks up a few places there.
Yeah, it brings him directly behind teammate Jarno Trulli, so we're seeing team drivers running in tandem. Trulli we saw in the pits with a brand new set of tyres on his Renault. I don't know whether Button has a chance to try the new rubber yet. We've just got just over 8.5 minutes of this second session remaining, so it's going to get a busy racetrack. Fisichella again, look at the way he's in lean, now that's confidence. A driver can only do that if he's got confidence in the rear end of a car. Forget about having sharp turn in or front end bite. What gives a driver speed and confidence is the back end sticking underneath him.
We still have all the drivers from 3rd to 18th covered by 1 second. It is that close at the moment, but we'll have to wait and see whether it stays that close. So notice that we're already seeing some marbles offline, John, an indication that the tyres are relatively soft here at Indianapolis.
I think a lot of that also is a factor of the circuit. When you run soft tyres on a low grip circuit, it tends to shear the surface rubber off in a lateral line, and that's what causes these little rubber balls to gather offline. As the track picks up rubber, it'll pick up grip, and hopefully we should see less rubber being shed. But I suspect that both tyre companies producing tyres that relatively are very soft, we're going to see a lot of build-up by the time we get to the end of lap 73 on Sunday.
Slight improvement in time here for Fisichella, although he stays in 7th place. A little bit of look at the live super slow-mo as he heads through turns 1 and 2. You can already see the change of direction that the cars have to make there.
A bit of a trick on the advertising. You can work it out. Be on edge, I suppose it's sort of, well, some blokes probably got a bonus for that one, and back in Weybridge in Surrey.
Work continues with Toyota. Salo into the last 2 Grand Prix of his career, presumably. He's effectively said that's it once his Toyota contract is over at the end of this year. His Formula 1 days are over, but I expect that we'll see Salo around in a racing environment. He is a racer and has always known racing. I wouldn't be surprised to see him somewhere or other still at the wheel of a car. Jarno Trulli, the Italian, still with Renault and with lots of hopes pinned on him for the next couple of years as Renault try and move slightly further towards the sharp end.
Well, Trulli did benefit from those fresh tyres because he's gone all the way ahead of Button 13th, and Trulli was 12th. Now Trulli up to 8th place on the 15.425, and he hasn't really apparently picked up a lot of time in that run, but he's picked up a lot of positions, so about 0.2 or so of a second in terms of time, but he's picked up 4 positions.
Keller. It's Jarno Trulli who we just to Fisichella, but that was Trulli who was travelling off onto the grass. Hopefully the anti-stall has worked. Yes, it has, so he can rejoin.
Oh, and look at the temper there. Oh, a naughty, angry little Jarno Trulli. That was in turn 9. He comes through 8. Let's see what happens. He gets it all. That's why, because he got it on the grass. He did a good job, I tell you, not to make contact, as the tyre barrier is literally just out of sight to the left. There it is. So well done, Jarno Trulli.
Do you see that tyre mark? How close it was. Let's take a look at it.
It's as close as it gets. I mean, that's just looming, and it's not even tyre barrier. That was actually solid Armco barrier. So the Italian's heart well and truly in his mouth on that one. And once again, Alex Young in the process of learning the circuit. Down on a 1:16.138. Only 0.2 of a second away from us. Well, in fact, it's not as Olivier Panis is in 18th place. Mark Webber on a 15.6. So Webber doing a very good job. Alex Young, well, discovers that even with running, this track is still tricky.
Yes, but he stays out of trouble. It's a good point you make, actually, about Webber being 15.626. It is so close all the way down the field. Oh, another spin, Irvine this time.
Yes, Eddie gets it wrong, and then he just tries to do a donut. I think that might be, again, well, that's an unusual. I haven't seen anybody spin up at turn 11. So Irvine, the first one to get it wrong there. That's the critical corner, because your exit speed out of 11 will determine the top speed, but the rate at which you accelerate all the way down this 1,822-metre front straightaway.
His teammate De La Rosa's at the end of that straight and turning in just behind David Coulthard. Let's take another look. Oh, well, they were together. That's interesting. Virtually together as they came up through that last section.
Oh, De La Rosa did not use his mirrors, and that was a no-no. Eddie will be an unhappy camper indeed. Now that is just, that's irresponsible, it's careless. We've seen Kimi Raikkonen do a similar thing and cause a major accident in Monza 2 weeks ago. Eddie Irvine, maybe sixth sense said, I bet you he hasn't even looked in his mirrors.
Well, there's not a great deal of love lost between these two. Irvine was busy in the press blaming De La Rosa for some of the lack of progress with the Jaguar chassis earlier on this year. So that's all pretty interesting, and I'm sure Irvine will make his feelings felt.
Well, I can guarantee you Eddie will not be short of the verbals. He did have a fairly major launch. Also blaming him for the lack of progress. I think it's maybe somewhat unfair because it was the team that followed De La Rosa, because De La Rosa was telling them what they wanted to hear. Eddie was telling them what they didn't want to hear, and De La Rosa could drive the car slightly easier than Eddie could at that early part of the season, and consequently teams go with who they think is going to give them the information.
Well, both cars are okay, despite that little incident, which was, as you say, scarily similar to what happened to Raikkonen and Sartos. Montoya.
Smoky BMW engine.
Yeah, he's been sitting in the pits, and Peter said they thought they might have an engine problem. Well, looks like they definitely have an engine problem now, and his rather limited running here on Friday leaves him down as 16th at the moment. 26 laps he's done, compared to some 44 laps, for example, done by Alan McNish today.
Yes, and that's a disappointing day for Williams BMW, also for Juan Pablo. He loves coming to Indianapolis, won here in 2000 in the IRL. So Dickie Stanford sits and studies the screens. Juan Pablo shut it down, I think, just at the point where we saw that smoke or steam or both emanating from around the airbox, and their dad talks to some of the guys, and what was it then? What was it?
Well, this proves to be a bit of a frustrating day for him, as you say. But Ralf Schumacher has done 35 laps today. Hopefully Williams have been able to work through their programme successfully. There's Connie. She's seeing the pictures, as we are, that Juan Pablo's out of the car, and there's not much more he's going to do in the remaining minute and 3/4.
Well, that looks a pretty smoky one to me. And whether it's a valve, an air valve, they've had a problem with air valves. Oh, Ralf Schumacher's retirement in Monza was the consequence of loss of air pressure in the valve mechanism.
Chance, what it looks like on the data is they may have a gearbox problem, so we've decided to stop the car and save it. If you can put the car down to P0, please, we'll see you back in the garage.
Well, that was interesting. So did they stop the car from the pits? They said, we picked up a gearbox problem, we decided to stop the car. So, interesting one.
Yes, I don't think we've actually heard anybody. Certainly it may have happened in the past, but because we got open radio traffic with Renault, we were able to pick that one up, and pretty unusual. I think maybe that was a bit of finger trouble on the pit lane, but nonetheless interesting to know the control that the teams now have over their machines. It's a shame they haven't got it over the drivers.
Absolutely. Could be a bit dodgy though if they suddenly turn all the systems off and you're just in a fairly crucial part of the track, so I'm not quite sure that it works like that.
Raikkonen, well, he was pretty good in that first sector, but lost a bunch of time. He maybe got caught with that yellow flag situation of Button's car, where it was stopped by the side of the track at the exit of turn 8.
So last few seconds of the session then. Raikkonen heading on round. Is he going to improve? Let's just see what this lap will be from the Finn. And no, it's backed off big time on that last sector. Although he said cross before the checkered, so maybe he'll put in a quicker lap, but I don't think he'll have enough terminal speed really to set off another quick lap.
Well, he was caught by the yellow lights, yellow flags were buttoned down at that turn 8 and turn 9 area of the racetrack. The yellow lights, the yellow flags are still standing. The flag is out now anyway. But Raikkonen did get across the line. He can continue and finish this lap. But of course he's going to be confronted with this yellow flag, yellow light situation at the part of track that caught him 1 lap ago.
Yes, they still actually got the yellow out for Montoya's car having stopped as well. So not really any chance for anyone to improve, sadly, on this last few moments of first free practice for the United States Grand Prix at Indianapolis. Bit of a lock-up there from Raikkonen, so still experimenting.
Bit naughty of Ralf though. Ralf Schumacher's gone through that first sector on a personal best. So has Mark Webber. Webber's just come into the pit lane, but Ralf Schumacher is still on the lap, so he needs to be careful. He might find himself being unloaded of a few dollars.
Well, here we are. Raikkonen heads on around onto the banking through the last corner and down towards the start-finish line. This won't be any improvement. He will stay in 4th place, I think, as he takes the checkered flag. 15.168 comparing to 14.986, so not far off his previous best. And once again, we've seen some very close times set in this session, with some 17 cars, well, no, about 16 cars covered by a second, from David Coulthard all the way down to Olivier Panis.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tight field, and I mean, it sounds as if we're going to have a cracking qualifying session. Of course, we've got the 2 45-minute sessions coming up early in the afternoon on Saturday, but I cannot wait for qualifying, because if it's as close as this at this stage of proceedings, then it's going to be dynamite when it comes to qualifying.
So just a quick reminder, the top 3, Michael Schumacher, Eddie Irvine and David Coulthard. Not a bad day for the Brits, is it? 2 drivers in the top 3 on the first day of free practice for the United States Grand Prix. Last time a British driver won at Indianapolis was Graham Hill back in 1966 when he won the Indy 500. So the times from the first free practice session on Friday, Michael Schumacher sets the pace by quite a margin in the Ferrari, but Eddie Irvine, a very strong second for Jaguar. Quite a big gap from him back to David Coulthard, but then just look how close the times are. As we move down the field, they are separated by 100ths of a second each time, and a very even mix of Michelin users and Bridgestone runners. The Honda-powered cars have been consistently quick across the speed traps, although 10th place Ralf Schumacher getting in amongst them with BMW power in the back of the Williams, setting the 10th fastest time. Good start as well for Frentzen, setting the 6th fastest time for Sauber. Pedro de la Rosa 11th. And on down the list we can see Jenson Button just ahead of Alan McNish. Great effort from Mark Webber in the Minardi. Look how many cars he's ahead of. Okay, Montoya had engine problems later on, but a number of other drivers there didn't seem to have too many problems, and Webber still ahead of Sato and Panis. Alex Young, of course, at the back, and the 20th car that we do not see listed, Rubens Barrichello, who suffered that accident in the first free practice session earlier on today. So it's been a difficult day, I should think, for the teams in some ways. Differing track conditions, damp earlier on. It has dried out nicely this afternoon. Wind conditions have been a bit changeable. Hopefully they'll have done their homework and be ready for qualifying tomorrow.
But Ben, what everybody feared is what we've seen here this afternoon. Michael Schumacher still, well, the thin end of 0.6 of a second faster than Eddie Irvine. We don't even know how much fuel he had on board. We don't know whether he ran a brand new set of tyres or not, but it is awesome.
It is. Let's just look back now at some of those highlights.